Welcome to Preeminent Test Prep. Today is day 30 in our 90-day SAT prep series. Today we're going to be going over the math section as well as the writing section. So we're going to spend about 30 minutes in the math section, then we'll switch over and do about half an hour in the SAT writing section. So for the math section today, we're going to be working from SAT Practice Test 4. We're going to be doing problems 24 through 30. Since it's only about 6 problems, it'll probably take a little bit less than that half hour that we normally do. These are going to be more of the most difficult questions on the SAT math section since they're more towards the end of that math with calculator section. Also keep in mind you can use a calculator on these because these are 24 through 30 of the math with calculator section. So as I go through these, I'll explain to you how to get to the correct answer in the most efficient way possible. So part of that is understanding patterns, tricks, tips, and strategies you can use in order to get rid of wrong answer choices. And part of it's understanding patterns with math that you can use to get to the correct answer choice much, much faster than if you were to take other routes or other alternative options. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with our math section for today. As always, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. And with that, let's get started. So we have question 24 as our first problem. We have in the circle above, AB is a diameter. If the length of arc ADB, which means it's going to be this arc here, from A all the way to B, what is the length of the radius of the circle? Okay, well, AB is our diameter, and I'm told that the length of that arc from AB to D is 8 pi. Well, if I have a diameter here, I know that's splitting my circle in half. Okay, so that arc length has to be half of my total arc length, or half my circumference. I know my circumference is 2 times my radius times pi. Okay, so if I have half my circumference is 8 pi, then to get my whole circumference, I have to multiply by 2 to get rid of that half of my circumference. So that's going to give me 16 pi is my total circumference. So 16 pi is my circumference C. I know that that's equal to 2 times my radius times pi. So now I divide by 2 times pi to solve for my radius. Divide each side by 2 times pi. 16 pi over 2 pi, my pi's will cancel. 16 over 2 is 8. So I know my radius then is going to equal 8. So correct answer for 24 is going to be C. Okay, so as far as this one goes, the big tips here is understanding that if we have a diameter AB, then that's splitting our circle in half. That's splitting our circumference in half as well, right? So ADB, that's going to be our circumference over 2. Okay, so understand if we have a diameter, that's splitting our circumference in half. Okay, the next thing was understanding that equation for the circumference, that it's 2 times pi times the radius. And then once you had that, it was just using algebra to solve for what the radius was. So that one's not too bad at all. All right, 25. Okay, 25 looks very, very complicated at first. It's not as complicated as it looks, and you may think at first that you're going to have to go A through D, and you actually don't, and I'll show you why here in a minute. So we have the polynomials f of x and g of x are defined above. Which of the following polynomials is divisible by 2x plus 3? Okay, if something is divisible by 2x plus 3, then that means 2x plus 3 is a factor of it, okay? So if 2x plus 3 is a factor of the equation, then that's what we're looking for in option A through D. We need 2x plus 3 to be a factor of one of these equations. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at f of x up here, and I'm going to look at g of x. Now, what I see in f of x is that I could factor out 2x, okay, because 2x is in every term. It's in 4x, it's in 6x squared, and it's in 2x cubed. So I'll factor out my 2x, and then I'll have 2x times x squared plus 3x, and then plus 2. Okay, so what do I see with this? Well, I see that g of x is x squared plus 3x plus 2, and that I can also have that up here in f of x. Well, then I could restate f of x, and I could just say that that's equal to 2x times g of x. Okay, so f of x is 2x times g of x. All right, well, now what I see is I have 2x here. Okay, that's the first part of my factor down here. So I have 2x right there. So I have 2x times g of x then times what? Well, I'm going to want to look for something with plus 3. Okay, I'm going to want to look for something that has a plus 3. And then what I'm going to look for is something with g of x. Because I know I want to get my 2x plus 3 together. And if I know that I have 3 times g of x as well, then what I can do is I can say 2x plus 3 times g of x. Okay, because that g of x then will get distributed here and here. So what I'm looking for is an equation that is set up like this, right? So we know that f of x is equal to 2x times g of x. So the first thing I'm going to look for is something with f of x. I see c and d have a coefficient in front of it, so I don't want those. So I'm looking at a and b. Next thing I'm looking for is a plus 3gx, and I see I have that in option B. Okay, so that's the quickest way we can get to our answer in 25, and that's the most efficient way by far. Okay, if you had to go through A through D without knowing this pattern and just go through and sort and divide, that's going to take you a long time. Okay, so that's why it's important to understand these patterns that we can use with math and these sort of tricks we can use in order to find that answer so much faster. Okay, so that's really important to understand here. Okay, so that one right there is very, very important. Notice how quick we did that one. That one really only took us about 2 minutes. If you were to have run through A through D and divided each one of those to find your right answer, that would have taken you a very, very long time. So understanding that relationship when we can get that 2x times g of x equaling f of x up here, how important that is. And then once we have 2 of x, we're just looking to add 3. That way we can factor out that 2x plus 3. Okay, so that's really what that's all about. Okay, so answer there is going to have to be B for 25. All right, now we've got question 26. So we have x and y are numbers such that negative y is less than x, which is less than y. Which of the following must be true? Okay, anytime we have a situation like this where we have to determine whether 1 through 3 are true, we just got to go through. There's really no secret formula with these ones. We just got to run through 8, 1, 2, and 3, see which ones are true, which ones are false. So let's go and start with 1. The absolute value of x must be less than y. Well, what I'm going to do here to make this easy to figure out with all of these 3 things is, since I have all variables up here, I kind of don't like that because that can be a little bit tricky, especially if you struggle to work with letters and numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick values for these. I'm going to insert them. That way I can see and then plug them into these rules. Okay, so we're going to call x 3. And if y has to be greater than that 3, then y could be 5. And then we have negative y, which must be negative 5. Okay, so we have a 5, a 3, and a negative 5, a 3, and a 5. Okay, so is the absolute value of x less than y? Well, let's see. Absolute value of x is 3. Is that less than y of 5? Yes. Okay, so 1 is going to be true, right? It has to be true. So 1 is going to be true. All of our answers have that, so that doesn't really help us. Now, what about 2? And that's actually an error I just made. Okay, that's something you shouldn't do. Notice how I checked if 1 is true or not. I shouldn't have done that because I should have seen that 1 is included in all my answer choices, so I actually just wasted time. That's one thing that you should do anytime you have a question with 1, 2, 3, is you should look at your answer choices, see if there's any that are included in all of them, because then don't waste time checking it. Okay, I just made a big mistake there because I wasted time checking something that didn't matter. Okay, so that was a mistake there. All right, number 2. So we have x greater than 0. Well, no, we see that 3 is not greater than 0, so we know that that's going to be wrong because we'd plug in 3 here. 3 is less than 0. Or I'm sorry, hang on a minute. I totally just misspoke there. X is greater than 0. Okay. Can x be greater than 0? Yes. Does it have to be? No. Okay, I totally just misspoke there again. All right, so as far as whether or not x has to be greater than 0, it can be greater than 0, but it doesn't have to be, and here's why. If we were to take this out and plug in negative 2, does this still work? It does, right? 5 is still greater than negative 2, and negative 2 is still greater than negative 5. So we see x doesn't have to be positive there. So 2 does not have to be true. Keep in mind it says must be true. Okay, what has to be true? We know that the absolute value, or I guess we don't even have to go through that because that one's already in all of these. As far as 3 then, actually we don't even have to do anything now because we've already seen then that 2 is incorrect. So any answer with 2 we can get rid of. So we can get rid of D, we can get rid of B. We know that 1 has to be true because it's in all of these. So, and then the question is 3 true? Is y greater than 0? Yes, y has to be positive. Okay, y has to be positive because it has to be greater than the negative version of itself, right? So if we were to have negative 2 for y, right? Let's say that, or we'll go ahead and pick negative, we'll pick negative 1 for y, right? If we had negative 1 for y and then we had negative y, well, this would make this 1, okay? Is negative 1 greater than 1? It's not, so that's incorrect, okay? So y is going to have to be greater than 0. So 1 and 3 will have to be correct, so our answer there is going to have to be C. So 26 answer there is going to have to be C. All right, so that takes us through 26. Now we've got 27. So we've got the relative housing cost for U.S. cities defined to be the ratio of the average housing cost for the city over the national housing cost, expressed as a percent. I've got the graph of it. Now I'm asked, the scatter plot shows relative housing. I already know that. The line of best fit is also shown and has an equation, y equals 0.0125x plus 61. What best explains how the number 61 in the equation relates to the scatter plot? All right, well, this number 61 is my y-intercept, which I know is my relative housing cost in pretty much an abandoned city, right? A population at very, very close to 0. Okay, so that's pretty much the lowest housing cost I can get as a function or a percent of the national average cost. So that's pretty much the lowest I can get. Keep in mind, it doesn't mean that nothing is below that because that is the average that we're working with here. So it's possible there are some that are less than that 61%, but it's not very likely. So let's go ahead and run through A through D, see what our options are. So option A, in 2005, the lowest housing cost was about $61 per month. No, okay, that 61 is talking about the percentage of the national average. So not per month, that's incorrect. B, in 2005, the lowest housing cost in the United States was 61% of the highest. No. Once again, this is an average of the housing cost as a percent of the national average. Okay, so It cannot be $61 per month, and it can't be 61% of the highest housing cost. So option C, in 2005, even in cities with low population densities, which is what that reference to this 0 here is, low population density, housing costs were never below 61% of the national average. Okay, we know that it's possible that there are some that are below that 61% of the national average because this is a line of best fit. Okay, with a line of best fit, there can be points that are below it, okay, because the line of best fit pretty much takes the average of those points, right? Or it kind of plots basically the best fit line of those points, but there can be points that are below it. So C is incorrect. D, in 2005, even in cities with low population densities, housing costs were likely at least 61% of the national average. Okay, that is true, okay? In 2005, these cities with low population densities, their housing costs, according to our line of best fit, which is why we say we're likely, okay, at least 61% of the national average, right? That's our y-intercept. We can't get lower than that. We can with points, right? We can have those points that are lower than that, but we can't have anything that fits our line of best fit lower than that, right? So it's most likely that those low density populations, their housing costs are at least 61% of the national average. That's likely according to the scatter plot, or not the scatter plot, I'm sorry, the line of best fit, not the scatter plot, line of best fit. So answer there is going to be D. All right, 28. So 28 says, which of the following is an equivalent form of the function f above in which the minimum value of f appears as a constant or coefficient? Okay, anytime I'm asked for some value to be shown as a constant or a coefficient, I'm going to calculate that value first and then just find my answer choice that has it, because sometimes there's only one that has it, and in that case, it makes it very, very easy. All right, so I know that my lowest point, that's going to be midway between my two x-intercepts. Okay, between my two x-intercepts is my vertex. Okay, so I see I have an x here and a positive x here. So I know it's going to be x squared, so that's going to be my largest exponent term, right? So I know my graph is going to open up like this. Okay, if I open up like this, my minimum is going to be between my x-intercepts. Okay, between my x-intercepts. So I look at my options here. I see I have an x-intercept at 4 because x minus 4, we're going to flip the sign. We're going to have an x-intercept at 4 then. And my other x-intercept is going to be where we flip the sign here from positive 6 to negative 6. Okay, so that midpoint between those I know is going to be at negative 1 because the midpoint between negative 6 and 4 is negative 1. So that means I plug in that negative 1 to x, solve for f of x, and that will be my minimum value. So I got negative 1 plus 5, negative 1 plus, or I'm sorry, negative 1 plus 6, that's going to give me 5. Then I have negative 1 minus 4, that's going to give me negative 5. So we have 5 times negative 5. We know that that's going to give us negative 25. Okay, so I find my answer with negative 25. I see the only one that has that is D, so D will be my answer there. Okay, so that one, the big tip there is understanding that if we're asked for some value shown as a constant or coefficient, we're going to solve for that value first because sometimes there's only one answer choice with it, and then we don't even have to worry about this part, this part, this part, or any of that. We just find the one that has that constant or coefficient. So answer there is going to be D for 28. All right, now we've got 29. If x is the average, the arithmetic mean of m and 9, y is the average of 2m and 15, and z is the average of 3m and 18, what is the average of x, y, and z in terms of m? All right, well, this means that we're going to have to sum our x, y, and z terms and then divide them by 3 since that's how many terms there are. Okay, so if x is the average of m and 9, then that tells us that we have m plus 9 over 2 because there's two terms. There's a 9 and there's an m. Okay, so that's what x is. Now we're going to have to add whatever y is. We know y is the average of 2m and 15. Okay, keep in mind there's two terms there as well, so we're going to put that divided by 2 as well. Next, we have to add z, which is the sum of, or the average of 3m and 18, 3m plus 18 then, also over 2 because there's two terms. Now we go ahead and we add these, okay? So we have an m here plus 2m, that gives me 3m plus 3m here, that's going to give me 6m. Next, I have a 9 plus 15, that gives me 24. 24 plus 18, that gives me 42, okay? Now that's all split over 2, but then we also have to divide that by 3 because we had the x term, the y term, and the z term. So we have to divide that by 3 terms as well. So 6m plus 42 over 2 is going to give us 3m plus 21. Then we divide that by 3, and that's going to give us m plus 21 over 3, which is 7. So m plus 7 will be our answer there, m plus 7. Okay, so that one right there, not too bad. Really just understanding, we make sure we have a common denominator here before we add, which we saw that we did. Then we added our terms, and then the big error that you can make here is if you forgot to go ahead and divide by 3 right here. If you forgot to divide by 3, you see that you would have answered D, 3m plus 21, which would have been incorrect. So you got to remember how many terms you have and to divide by that many terms. So that one right there is really making sure you're paying attention to those little details, because if you're not, then you're going to get that one wrong. Okay, I'm going to erase this just so that we can see that problem on the right for number 30, and then let's get into 30. So it looks like today we'll probably end up finishing up fairly early with the math section, but that's okay because we're already still ahead of where I thought we were going to be for this 90-day course, so I'm not too concerned about us finishing early here because we're already ahead of pace, so we'll be okay. So we've got 30, the function f of x equals x to the third power minus x squared minus x minus 11 over 4. It's graphed in the xy plane. If k is a constant, such that the equation f of x equals k has 3 real solutions, which of the following could be the value of k? All right, 3 real solutions means that we have 3 intercepts of this f of x equals k, which is just going to be some y value, right? Some y value, whatever it may be, some y value. It's got 3 real solutions. That means it's got 3 intercepts, okay? So I need this graph of this f of x right here, this big equation here, which is already graphed in this plane. I need it to cross my constant 3 times. I see I got 1 cross here, 2 cross here, and 3 cross here. So that y value there needs to be that -3. Okay, so that k then has to be -3. So answer there is going to be D. Okay, that one right there is a very, very easy question to come at 30. Keep in mind that this is from SAT Practice Test 4, which was released before the College Board switched over to that new version of the SAT. So SAT Practice Test 4, sometimes it has some things that are kind of peculiar to it. Same with SAT Practice Test 2, that are not necessarily perfectly representative of what you'll see on the SAT. An example of that is just that these problems at the end, in my opinion, on SAT Practice Test 2 and 4, they're a little bit easier than I think what you would see on the SAT Math with Calculator section, just because they came a little bit earlier. So that's just my take, my opinion. But either way, they're still very helpful for review, even if they're a little bit easier. But they're still definitely helpful for review, and they're material you still need to know. So keep that in mind. Even though they're from Practice Test 2 and 4, this is still stuff that will be tested on the SAT Math section, so you still need to know how to do it, because it will definitely be tested one way or the other, whether it's at question 30 or at 20. That's really just the only difference there. So just making sure that you're paying attention, because these still are very good practice problems to do because they're still teaching us what we need to know. All right, so with that, that takes us through the math section today. Now we'll go ahead and switch over to the writing section. All right, let's get started with the writing section for today. So today we're going to be focusing on accuracy still. We'll worry about pacing more in a couple weeks. So as far as accuracy, once again, we'll be going through 2 different passages, so a total of 22 questions. They'll be from the 2019 SAT released test from Maine, right? So it was a state of Maine released SAT that also released the answers, or the Q&A, which includes the answers. So I'll be going through this today. It's going to be a total of 22 questions, like I said. So as I go through, I'll be giving you my tips, tricks, advice, and strategies for the SAT writing section. The SAT writing section has a lot of little things that if you learn how to recognize, it makes it a lot easier. So they're kind of patterns, if you will, if you want to call them that. But yeah, so there's really definitely a lot with the SAT writing section that if you learn from me, I think it will definitely help you become more efficient and really help you understand how to get to the correct answer choice and why the correct answer choice is correct and others are incorrect. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So I'll read through the passage. As I get to questions, I'll answer them. Some of them you need to read further on, in which case, if I have to read further on, I'll answer ones that are further on first if they come before me finding the answer to the previous one. So with that, let's get started. So we have Frida saying, for centuries, Japanese bird enthusiasts had bred white-rumped munias, brown finches with tufts of white feathers for, that's going to be their plumage. Okay, so how did I know that? How did I know it had to be there? Now keep in mind it has to be T-H-E-I-R because that's the correct there. Okay, how did I know that? Well, I knew it had to be plural. Okay, because it was the Japanese bird enthusiasts have bred white-rumped munias, brown finches with tufts of white feathers. For there is referring to the munias and the brown finches, both of which are plural. Okay, so I know my pronoun here had to be plural, so it can't be one's or his or her, or it's because those are all singular. Okay, I need it to be plural and possessive. Plural and possessive, I see my option that is plural and possessive is C there. Okay, so anytime I have a pronoun that is underlined, I'm always going to look to make sure I match in number to whatever subject it's referring to, and then also if it's possessive. Okay, so anytime a pronoun is underlined, I look for the number, and then also whether or not it is possessive. So that's the big tip there. Next, we have generations of this selective breeding have produced a new species, the Bengalese finch. Okay, one thing that jumps out to me immediately is I had a colon right here. I'm not going to say that colon right here is introducing this Bengalese finch, right? I'm not going to put a semicolon after that. I can't do that grammatically. That's incorrect, so I know A is wrong right off the bat. That tells me D is also wrong because it has that semicolon as well. I can't use a comma and then say it exists only in captivity because then I have an independent clause after that comma, and I can't have that. So what I'm going to have here is I'm going to have the Bengalese finch and then a comma, which exists only in captivity, right? That comma and then saying which exists only in captivity, right? Because this which exists only in captivity, it's non-essential. It's non-essential, and it refers to this Bengalese finch. And since it's non-essential, we're going to put that comma in front of it. Okay, so our answer for 24 is going to be B. All right, next thing. Another thing that I would just say as far as this question here, just that you can take a note on, just because I think it's good to know, is anytime that I see something like this where I have an independent clause and then I use either a M dash or a colon to introduce something, in this case the Bengalese finch, if I see I have something after it, like this, existing only in captivity, right, and I have this word right here, I'm always going to look to see if I can use which, who, or when in order to connect it, right? So anytime I have that, I'd look to use a comma and then say who if it's a subject before it, or in this case, since it's finch, I would look to say the finch which exists only in captivity. So which, I'd always be looking to put a who, a which, or a when right there. If it was a time, I'd do a when, right? So anytime I see that, I'm looking to do a comma and then that. All right, so 24 answer there is going to be B. All right, 25. So we've got such breeding was intended to produce certain physical qualities in the domesticated finches, but it also had an unintended consequence. Okay, this right here is a build-up into my unintended consequence. When I see but it also had an unintended consequence, and then I see I have the word increased here, I know I'm looking to put something in here to emphasize what comes after that consequence, right? We want something that's going to emphasize what that consequence is. So I'm looking for either an M dash or a colon, M dash or a colon. Okay, so I see I don't have an M dash, I see I do have a colon, so I know my answer there is going to be B. So 25, answer there will be B, right? We want to use this colon in order to emphasize that that unintended consequence is the increased song complexity in the Bengalese finch relative to that of the white-rumped munia. Okay, I know A, no change, will be my correct answer for 26. So how do I know that? Well, anytime I'm asked to compare something like this, right? In this case, we're comparing that song complexity in the Bengalese finch to that of the white-rumped munia. You heard me say it as well, to that of the white-rumped munia. Okay, if I'm comparing that song complexity, I can't say complexity in the Bengalese finch to the white-rumped munia because it's not the white-rumped munia it's getting compared to. It's comparing that song complexity of the white-rumped munia. Okay, so that of the white-rumped munia. So I couldn't say D because that would be incorrect. I can't say when compared with the white-rumped munia because once again we have to talk about that being that song complexity. That song complexity is singular, so I also wouldn't say with those of the white-rumped munia because song complexity is singular. So A is our correct answer for 26. So you see I slow down right now. I'm just kind of giving you answer explanations and kind of also showing you why answers are incorrect. Now keep in mind, if I'm doing this on my own and I was taking the SAT, once I find my correct answer, I don't take the time to discuss why things are incorrect, right? I just find my correct answer and go. Because I've been doing this long enough and I feel very, very comfortable with that. I feel that that's what your strategy should be at as well, right? If you're very, very comfortable with the SAT and you see you obviously have a correct answer, don't waste time going through the incorrect answers. Just move on, go back to it at the end and check your work. But because I'm teaching this to you right now, that's why I'm kind of going through why wrong answer choices are incorrect. All right, 27, I've got which choice is effectively combining sentences. So I'll read up. We got to explain the phenomenon, Tokyo ornithologist Kazuo Okanoya at first reasoned that finch song complexity was driven by mate selection. He found female finches tend to choose males with loud, high-pitched improvisational songs. Okay, when I see I have males right here, I don't want to repeat that, so I want to get rid of these males. Are chosen over those with soft, low-pitched, predictable songs. Okay, so I'm really looking to make sure I'm not repeating males twice here. So I'm going to look to go down A through D, find which one is going to be more than likely my answer. Now, another strategy that I would recommend doing when you're asked to combine the sentences at the underlined portion is I actually take back what I just said about going down A through D. If you're asked to combine sentences, what I would recommend you do is I would recommend you start with the shortest one. Okay, here's why I recommend that. Because if you start with the shortest one, it's the one that is most likely to be efficient and concise in its word choice. So that's the one that's most likely to be, I'm not going to say it's the most likely to be correct, but it is more than likely going to be the one that's most efficient or concise. Okay, so if you're going to go through these, you're going to go through it till you find one that works grammatically and that fits well and has a correct sequence of events. But I would recommend going in the order of the smallest sentence to the largest sentence. So I would do this one last. I would do this one second to last. This one would be the second one I do, and I do this one first. Okay, so this would be a 1, this would be a 2, this would be a 3, this would be a 4. Okay, so that's how I would approach these questions. So anytime I'm asked to combine the sentences, I'm going to start with the shortest one first. That's how I would do it. So if the shortest one was D, I'd start with D. In this case, it's A, so we'll start with A. So female finches tend to choose males with loud, high-pitched, improvisational songs over those with soft, low-pitched, predictable songs. Then after that, I see we have a comma, so breeders selectively reproduce, or I'm sorry, so breeders selecting reproductively successful birds must have also selected the most dynamic singers. Yes, that works perfectly, right? We're not repeating males, which is good, okay? There's nothing that is redundant or repetitive, so I know A would be my answer. I would just go ahead and move on from there if I were taking this, but because I'm trying to teach you, I want to show you why B, C, and D are wrong real quick. All right, so let's go ahead and run through that. B, males with loud, high-pitched, improvisational songs tend to be the ones chosen by female finches over those with soft, low-pitched, predictable songs. And then we have so breeders selectively reproduce successful birds must also have the most dynamic singers. Okay, so here's the thing about this is we're splitting up our males with loud, high-pitched, improvisational songs. We're splitting that up to those with soft, low-pitched, predictable songs. Okay, we don't want to split those two up by including this female finches here because those two contrast each other and we want that contrast to be close with each other like they are in A. So that's why B is wrong. C, loud, high-pitched, improvisational songs are sung by males that female finches tend to choose over those. See, this one's just really kind of confusing with the order, so C is incorrect. We wouldn't say it naturally in that order, right? That's really a bad way to say it. We want to talk about how we have these female finches and then tending to choose those males, and then we want to contrast the two different types of male songs. Okay, we don't want to be wordy, and that C was very wordy. D, choosing males with high-pitched improvisational songs over those with soft, low-pitched, predictable songs is what female finches tend to do. Once again, that's very wordy and inefficient, so D would be incorrect there. All right, 28. However, Berkeley anthropologist Terence Deacon saw a contradiction in this idea. Song complexity should occur when there is pressure to identify a mate of the same species. Okay, anytime that I have something starting a sentence, now in this case you may say, oh, it's not starting a sentence, but it is starting an independent clause because this semicolon's right here. Anytime I see I have that followed by a comma, not the word that, but anytime I see I have a transition followed by a comma, so in this case it's two words, you could also see it be one word like it is over here. That means I'm always looking to connect my previous clause to my next one, right? So I'm going to, or my previous sentence to my next one. So now I'm going to read what comes after it and then decide what should come here. So I'm not even going to read this. So we have, it should not occur among birds in captivity where this pressure is lower. What we just discussed in our previous sentence, that they shouldn't be trying to, that song complexity should only occur if they're trying to identify a mate of the same species, and therefore, it should not occur among birds in captivity where this pressure is lower, right? That's a causal relationship. If I'm talking about a causal relationship, I want to use therefore. Okay, therefore is a great word for a causal relationship. So C would be my correct answer there. So a lot of times with transition words like that, you're looking to maintain or find the relationship between the two sentences. So we have Deacon proposed that instead, since white-rumped munias in more homogeneous groups lack pressure to find other white-rumped munias, random genetic mutations result in song improvisation are allowed to propagate, leading to more complex songs. To test the hypothesis, Okanaya's team tracked wild white-rumped munias in 3 areas of Taiwan. At each site, okay, right here, I'd be looking at one of two things. Okay, so this is obviously a verb, and anytime I have a verb underlined mid-sentence, I'm looking at two things. I'm either looking to maintain its number, right? Have it have the same number as the subject, or I'm looking at tense, or I'm looking at tone. Now in this case, a way to tell if it's tone is if all the words over here have the same ending, right? They have the same ending and they're different base words. I know it's a tone question, or an accuracy question, like you have to make it accurate according to what the text is saying. Okay, so I'm going to read on. We have at each site, they did what to the flock composition, the percentage of observed flocks that were mixed, containing white-rumped munias and other species, and they measured the linearity of the munias songs. Okay, so they're measuring linearity. They're not diagnosing flock composition, right? They're recording this down, or they're analyzing it, right? They're not dissecting it because you can't dissect flock composition. You can't diagnose it either, but you can analyze it. You cannot trace it, but you can analyze that flock composition. So D would be our correct answer there. That one's really looking for an accurate word choice, an accurate. Here, I'm going to rewrite that. That's really looking for an accurate word choice according to what the passage is talking about. So that one you had to have context to answer. Okay, you see I boxed up measured down here because that gave me that hint or that context that told me that I'm really conducting that sort of experiment in which I'm analyzing things and measuring things. So D is my answer for 29. Okay, now we've got question 30 right here. The linearity at the mountainous site was more than, okay, so anytime that I see a number in an answer like this, I'm usually going to be asked to refer to a figure. In this case, I'm asked which choice reflects the information presented in figure 1. So I'm looking at the linearity at the mountainous site, and then I'm comparing that to this agricultural site. Okay, and I'm also possibly comparing to an urban site, depends on what options are over here. So I'm going to take a look at my figure 1. I see that we have this mountainous site is at about a little bit under 0.6. I see urban and agricultural are a little bit above 0.7 but below 0.8. So then I know that that mountainous is about 0.1 lower than that urban or the agricultural. So my answer there is going to have to be A, no change. Okay, so that one right there, it's just interpreting your data table. So that's a data interpretation question, or your bar graph in this case. Next we got 31. 31, I'm told that it's presenting data in figure 2, so I know it's going to deal with that. I see at the same time, and then I have something about percentage of flocks at a site being mixed versus the mountain site, right? So I'm looking at these mixed flocks. I see that the urban area, we have greater than 20% mixed flocks. Agricultural area also a little bit under 20% for mixed flocks. And mountainous area is just about 0. Okay, so I see they're both greater than the mountainous. So we've got option B, a greater percentage of flocks at the urban and agricultural sites were mixed than at the mountainous. Yes, that is correct for 31, right? That's accurate according to the data. B will be my correct answer there. So that's a data interpretation question there as well. All right, Okanaya's study indicates that, okay, I already know I have to get rid of this comma, and my answer is going to be D. How do I know that so quickly? I'll quick cover that. Anytime that I say a study indicates that or something and then that, I don't want to have something after that, right? That is taking the place of anything that would come after it, right? If I say that, for example, if I was to say, he said that, right? That replaces that comma that would have to go there. So that's just one thing to know. I've never really seen that. I don't think I've ever seen that on a practice test or an SAT, but that's just something to know. If I say that, I don't want to have something after it, okay? I would not want to have an M- after it. I wouldn't want to have a comma after it or before it or anything. So answer there is going to be D. We don't want to split that up from the word song. Okay, so song complexity is subject to the pressure. The birds need to identify a mate of the same species. When this pressure is relaxed, song complexity increases rather than decreases. Such relaxation explains song complexity in the white-rumped Munia's descendant, the domesticated Bengalese finch, and provides, okay, as far as this part, I know that I'm asked to provide a conclusion that places the passage's discussion within a larger scientific context. So at this point, I'm really looking to find a larger scientific context for this. So I see that I'm going to look for something that isn't talking specifically about these species, these white-rumped Munias, or about the white-rumped Munias in D. So B and D are going to be off the table. I see that. Option A says provides intriguing support for the idea that birdsong can evolve through a complex interaction of selective pressures. Yes, absolutely, right? We talk about selective pressures throughout this passage being multiple interactions that really come together to create this birdsong and the complexity behind it. So A would be our correct answer for 33. As far as why C is wrong, C says proves that habitat has more to do with birdsong complexity than does any specific mating pressure, and we do not make that claim. So C is incorrect there. So now we can go ahead and move on to our next passage. All right, so let's get started with our last passage here. We got questions 34 to 44 based on the following. So anytime I see a 1 here, right, that's going to be telling me I'm placing a paragraph. You don't see these questions very often, but it's possible it could show up. So anytime I'm asked to place a paragraph, the question will 90% of the time, in my opinion, or at least most of the time, I don't know the exact percentage, but it'll be at the end of that section, right? So we've got to think about the passage as a whole. The writer wants to insert the following sentence. Any discussion of agricultural drones must acknowledge the potential safety concerns surrounding their use. To make it logical, the sentence should be placed at the beginning of paragraph what? Okay, so this really right here, if I'm placing a sentence at the beginning of my paragraph, that means it's basically going to act as a topic sentence, right? In which case, the rest of my paragraph should be illustrating the ideas contained in this sentence. So if we're saying any discussion of agricultural drones must acknowledge the potential safety concerns surrounding their use, then I'm going to look to list safety concerns surrounding their use after, or potential solutions to this problem. Okay, so I'm going to try to place this as I read through. So once I start hearing safety concerns, that's when I'm going to start looking to place it. But now I'm going to go back and I'm going to read through my passage. Okay. All right, so we got which choice provides the best supporting information about drones that is further developed in the passage. Well, I need to know more about what's going to get further developed in the passage. Let's go ahead and start reading. Precision agriculture, the use of technology and data analysis in farming, has a new tool at its disposal, the type of remote-controlled aerial vehicle commonly known as a drone. Farmers looking to increase efficiency might decide that drones, and then I got to skip that part because I don't know if that's correct yet, are just what they need. Detailed data about crop health provided by drones can guide crucial decisions for farmers, such as when it's going to be to irrigate and whether to use chemical treatments. But that's a statement, not a question. Okay, that's a statement and not a question. So 35, my answer there would be B. Okay, that statement is correct, but it's not a question. So we can get rid of C as well because it's not a question. Now, And then providing information that can guide crucial decisions for farmers, such as when to irrigate, is correct. We wouldn't say such as when should they irrigate. We would say when to irrigate. So correct answer there is going to be B. All right, next thing. We can go back now and answer 34 because we just got some more context about what our passage is going to be about. It's going to be about drone use and farming. So let's look at our options. Farmers looking to increase efficiency might decide that drones, which have already proven useful to the film industry, no, that's unrelated to our topic. A is incorrect. B, along with training on how to operate them properly, also incorrect, not our topic. C, with the critical information they provide about harvests. Yes, that's what we're discussing, that critical information they are discussing about how they can give information about the harvest for the farmers. D, despite criticism about them from consumer advocates, no, that is not what we're talking about here. So C will be our correct answer for 34. Okay, one thing to note, pretty much you should already have really noticed this, so I'm kind of pointing out the obvious here. If I'm asked for something that's further developed in the passage, I have to read on because I can't know it without reading on. So in that case, you saw I read on a few sentences until I got a better idea, went back and answered it. You could even have read on more, as long as you remember to go back and answer 34. It's perfectly fine to read on more if you want more context there. So agricultural drones come equipped with a video or still image camera that farmers can use to observe the condition of their crops. Some drone companies, now I'm asked for what is effectively setting up the information provided in the next part of the sentence, so I need to know what comes after. They can combine digital files from drones into color-coded maps that mark zones indicating differences in growth weights or the prevalence of weeds, pests, or weather damage. Okay, this is really showing me that it can provide in-depth analysis in detail, provide data for these farmers as far as what they're going to need. So let's look for an option or an answer choice that says that. We have option A, also offer analysis services. Yes, right, that is offering an analysis service. They're analyzing that prevalence of weed, analyzing weather damage, analyzing pests. So that would be our correct answer there. I'm going to cover why B, C, and D are wrong as well here. Stand to make a considerable profit. No, that's not what we're talking about after that, that spot we're looking to replace. C, make drones that can be controlled by mobile apps. We never discuss mobile apps. That's incorrect. D, focus only on specialty crops. We never say we only focus on specialty crops. D is incorrect. With these maps, a farmer can irrigate and apply herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers to each part of a field according to its specific needs. Okay, keep in mind, still looking to place that, but I haven't read anything where we talk about safety hazards yet, so I'm still not placing it yet. Okay, drones compare favorably with image capturing satellites and piloted aircraft, other technologies that are used to gain aerial views. Drones are less expensive, provide finer grained images. Okay, right here I know I'm looking at a potential parallelism question because I'm starting a list, so keep that in mind. It's a potential parallelism question, and I'll actually show you it ends up not necessarily being one in a minute, but keep in mind anytime we see that, we are looking at that as a possibility because we have a list here. And they fly low to the ground, can take pictures on even cloudy days. Okay, here's the thing about this. I know that I have to have a comma here. So how do I know that? Well, I know that because this right here, the they fly low to the ground, that's going to have to be non-essential. Now, it isn't right now, because right now that's a full-on independent clause, right? So we know A is going to have to be incorrect. But the reason I know I have to have a comma after and is because when I see I have a comma here and an and here, my next term has to be, after this and, it's going to have to be, unless I have a non-essential phrase, it's going to have to be something that's parallel to less expensive and providing finer grained details, right? So provide here is a present tense verb. Can is my present tense verb here. Can is going to be my last term. Okay, so if I'm splitting my and from my last term, what's in between it has to be a non-essential phrase that can be taken out, which means we're going to have a comma after and, right? So if we have to have a comma after and, that means we can get rid of A, B, and C, and we're left with D, right? So then we have and, because they can fly low to the ground, or and because they fly low to the ground, can take pictures even on cloudy days, right? So because they fly low to the ground, they can take pictures on cloudy days. So answer for 37 there is going to be D. So that's one thing to watch for, would be the inclusion of a non-essential phrase or clause in the middle of a parallelism sequence like that. That is a big, I'm going to draw a red flag if I know how to do that with this pen. I'm going to do it. Okay, that should be a red flag. You want to pay attention to that. Anytime that you have parallelism and you have something interrupting it like that, that being a non-essential phrase or clause, make sure you pay close attention to where commas are at and things like that in that, because that's going to be a little bit of probably a more difficult question on the SAT writing section, in my opinion. That's probably one of the hardest, is if you were to have a parallelism question and then you have a non-essential phrase or clause inside of it. So definitely make sure that you're staying focused if you ever see that happen. All right, so with that, we can go ahead and move on to 38 now. So 37 is going to be D. Let's go ahead and move on to 38. So we've got Hediger, whose family operates a 3,400-acre organic farm in Colorado, can attest to the advantages of the technology. Okay, now I'm asked for which information about Heidegger provides the most effective transition between that previous sentence and the following sentence. Previous sentence, we talked about how this person can attest to the advantages. Now we say, Heidegger acquired a drone after losing half her harvest in 1 year to weeds. Yes, that's quite possibly a good answer choice, but I want to read through my other ones just to see if there's anything better. I don't think there will be, but let's just double check. Considering acquiring a drone from Corey Jacobs, who run a farm, that's really not connecting our previous sentence. I also want to know what comes after because I'm going to want to connect it to that, so I'm going to read that now. She estimates identifying the problem faster with timely crop data and using less weed killer will save, and that's going to be no change, her tens of thousands of dollars in future years. Okay, and I'll answer 40, and I'll talk more about 39 in a minute here. So as far as what should go right here for 38, no change is going to be our correct answer for 38, and here's why. If we look at option C, it says has expressed frustration with federal regulations on drones. We're not discussing federal regulations. D, enjoying having an aerial view of her farm. None of those options are really showing why she wants that, why she wants this drone. It's not showing our advantage of that technology, right? But her saying that she got it after losing half her harvest in a year to weeds is going to pretty much not explicitly but implicitly state that she bought it hoping to solve this weed problem. Okay, so it's implicitly suggesting that a drone helps with solving her weed problem. So A is going to be solving her weed problem as in weed for her harvest, not as in marijuana. So answer there is going to be A. Now we've got question 39. So I just talked about that one. So we've got using less weed killer will save her tens of thousands of dollars in future years. Okay, we know it's future years, so we need to be in the future tense. The only option here that's in future tense is going to be option A, will save. So we know future tense has to be 39. We know that has to be answer choice A. Okay, next thing I see, I have the end of a sentence connected to the beginning. I'm probably going to be asked to connect them in some way or the other. Okay, so I have will save her tens of thousands of dollars in future years. I would probably want to put a comma here and then say, I would look for a comma there and then which is considerably more than the $7,000 she paid, but I see I don't have that option. Okay, and I can't say this is considerably more. I'd have to say which is, so I know C is incorrect there. I can't use a semicolon here, okay, because otherwise we just have considerably more than $7,000 she paid for the drone and any potential costs associated with reviewing images. That's a dependent clause. We can't have a dependent clause with a semicolon, so that's incorrect. Leaving my only option. Also, if we had a period here, that's a dependent clause. We can't have a sentence be a dependent clause. So I know my only answer choice left is B because we can use an M dash for that dependent clause, especially because it adds emphasis onto something that should be emphasized. So B would be my correct answer for 40. All right, now I got to remember, I still got to place that sentence that talks about the disadvantages or the safety hazards of those drones. So keep that in mind still. So we have pilots who fly planes for crop dusting and other purposes experience disquiet regarding, okay, that's too wordy. So I know I'm switching that, that's wordy. Stew over, that's too casual or slang, I don't like that either. C, get all worked up about, once again, casual and wordy. And then D, worry about, that fits our tone the most, it's also the most concise, so D would be our answer for 41. All right, 42, we've got drones might be accidentally flown into nearby tall objects such as cell phone towers. Okay, that's talking about safety hazards. So that suggests to me I should place this in front of paragraph 4, that sentence. Objections to drones may be engaged with regulations? No. Not refuted with regulations either. Not encountered with regulations, but those objections to them may be addressed with regulations. So answer there is going to be B for 42. Okay, that one's really just a word choice question based on the context of the passage, understanding that tone and trying to match that tone, as well as applying the definition of the word correctly to the sentence there. Okay, so I see that we really are talking about regulations because otherwise you have problems with safety in drones. So I see I am going to want to place that after that paragraph 4. So correct answer then for here is going to be C, 4. So 44, correct answer there will be C. We got 43 as our last question, I do believe. Let me just double check. Looks like we do. So we've got, despite these challenges, it is important for drones. That's going to be 2B. How did I know that? Well, this is an idiom question, right? It's just asking us what's idiomatic or what would we naturally say? What would standard English conventions have us say? And that would be 2B. A giveaway for that is I see I have what's the word? I believe preposition is the word. Yes, it is. So I have a preposition out front, right? 2B. I know that that's pretty much an indicator. It's probably going to be an idiom question, right? I see being here. So yeah, it's important for drones to be integrated into the natural or into the agricultural system. We wouldn't say being integrated because then we're having two verbs and we don't want to have two verbs back to back like that. So that's going to be incorrect there. Okay, we wouldn't say in being or be. We would have to have to be. That's the idiomatic way to say that. All right, so that takes us through the writing section today. Hopefully that was helpful. Be sure to stay tuned in tomorrow. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If this was helpful, there'll be a donation link in the description when it's up and running. Any private SAT tutoring I'm doing will be linked in the description. Any private college admissions consulting I'm doing will be linked in the description. As always, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and have a great day.